Big Match John, the leader of the C Nation, the man that always rose above hate. Wap-ba-doo, ba-ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba-ba, ba-ba-ba. Okay, enough of that. The franchise of WWE, not to be confused with the franchise Shane Douglas, because let's be honest, John Cena was actually reliable when it came to, well, not being a fucking conspiracy nut. But enough about Shane Douglas. Let's talk about John Cena. It's coming up on 20 years since his debut on the main roster against Kurt Angle in a terrific but short match where it showed that he'd arrived. And even though times were tough and he had to have some growing pains, not to be confused with that weird show that has not aged all that well, John Cena has certainly had some highlights, some lowlights that I covered in a Real Honest Thoughts video. You can check that out if you want. But he's had many great matches on TV, on pay-per-view, now premium live events. And it's impossible to encapsulate 20 years of John Cena into just 20 matches. So I want to know your favorite John Cena matches in the comments, please. But I'm John Redland with my 20 favorite John Cena matches ever. With some honorable mentions, of course. Yeah, it's going to be impossible to do this, and I'm going to get, like, fucking killed for not including some. But nevertheless, let's start with the honorable mentions versus CM Punk at Night of Champions 2012. Terrific goddamn match. They always had great goddamn matches together. I mean, even going back to, like, before Cena and Punk had the iconic Money in the Bank 2011 match, which will be mentioned on this list. They always had great chemistry, and their 2012 feud I thought was really goddamn good because Punk switched heel during his run, and this is pretty good. And then we go to another one versus Jericho versus Christian in a three-way, oh my, at Vengeance 2005. This is when Christian was at last, again, on his own, and also was basically getting like a brief mini push, and then nothing really came of it. And he went to TNA for a little bit, and actually like 3 years, but was treated pretty goddamn seriously. And then came back, and then really wasn't treated all that seriously, unfortunately. But nevertheless, pretty good goddamn match. On the same show where they had Batista versus Triple H in the final of their trilogy, where it was a Hell in a Cell match, and Triple H went with spitting the blood capsule. And another honorable mention versus Big Show at Mania 20 for the U.S. Championship. Not necessarily the best match, but it was cool to see Cena do the FU to the huge man that was the Big Show. And he won the U.S. title on the big stage. And versus Eddie Guerrero in a parking lot brawl on the September 2003 edition of SmackDown. They had a great brief feud with some promos that haven't aged all that well. But my fucking goodness, that was brutal. And finally, the last honorable mention versus Brock Lesnar at Backlash 2003. Now, let's crack on with the list. Number 20 versus Brock Lesnar at Extreme Rules 2012. I would have ranked this a lot higher had Brock Lesnar won like he should have. That being said, brutal start, brutal finish. Really crazy stuff. Brock just doing that freaking bump where he just tumbles over the top because he's like, I'm just going to do this because I'm the Bork Laser. But it was bloody. It was brutal. I just wish that Brock would have won. That being said, it was probably Vince's way of humbling him after he had left, 8 years prior, or just over 8 years prior. Nevertheless, great goddamn match, and showed a different side of Cena, considering he had just lost the once-in-a-lifetime match that Vince lied to us about. You will notice an absence of the twice-in-a-lifetime match. While not bad, it's kind of tainted by the fact that, well, yeah, WrestleMania 29 wasn't very fucking good overall. But the Extreme Rules match, very good. And now we move on, to number 19 versus JBL for the WWE Championship at Mania 21. Is this the best title match that John Cena's had? No, not even fucking close. In fact, there are some that I left off of this list entirely that are probably better matches. And by probably, I mean completely. But this is the big moment where John Cena was crowned as the guy, as the WWE Champion. Even though it seemed like they were going with Batista, Cena was younger. He was less injury prone. And I love Batista. Don't get me wrong. Batista had a hell of a goddamn career. I might do a retrospective on him at some point and talk about some of his best matches. But John Cena was going to be made the guy, and he was. By this time, the following year, he was basically the guy. He was cemented as being the person to rely on. And let's be honest, John Cena, for all intents and purposes, him and Roman Reigns are probably the last megastars that WWE is going to end up having. Yes, there's the Bork Laser, but he's part-time. As far as guys that have been there for a while, John Cena may be the last franchise guy that they have when millions of people were watching. And him being JBL was the cherry on her sundae that you eventually have to pop. Moving hastily on from this mental image that I gave you all, number 18 versus Batista at SummerSlam 2008. I didn't put any of their trilogy from 2010. While not bad matches, actually some of them were good and invented finishes. Batista was on his way out, and I feel that this was better because even though it had a small build, it had a very small build, Cena and Batista, they did some great shit here. Unfortunately, Cena also suffered a neck injury that would actually keep him out for a few months until he came back at Survivor Series 2008. But goddamn, if this just wasn't great, catching that Batista bomb, that powerbomb off the ropes, that was pretty goddamn brutal. And Batista and Cena cutting a really good goddamn pace here. For two guys that got a lot of flack for not being able to wrestle, but man, if they didn't fucking goddamn arrive here and deliver a goddamn cracking match. Number 17 versus Chris Masters versus Carlito versus Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels versus Kane at New Year's Revolution 2006 Elimination Chamber. And also, you might as well include the Edge match where Edge successfully cashed in after John Cena had beaten everybody. The last two people in this match besides Cena were Chris Masters and Carlito. And if that isn't funny, I don't know what is. And I love Carlito, don't get me wrong. Masters was a guy I think they could have done more with, especially in the second run. But this was great. Yes, people were really getting tired of Cena by this point, because he had beaten Kurt Angle, he'd beaten everybody. Just devoured everybody. Eaten everybody, whoop-a-doo. But after he won, Edge cashed in. But this is a forgotten, pretty good Elimination Chamber match, in all honesty. And it had a bunch of people that had feuded in the past. Kane, was somebody, I think it was just pretty much included there because they needed a big guy. Carlito and Masters had teamed up and would be teaming up a little bit later. Angle and Shawn had delivered an incredible fucking matches with some great goddamn, work. Another honorable mention I probably should have included was Cena versus Angle versus Shawn at Taboo Tuesday 2005. But nevertheless, impossible again to summarize his 20-year career on just one countdown. I mean, I could probably do two more countdowns and still not scratch the surface of great matches that he delivered. Now, I'm not even the biggest Cena fan. I probably should have said that at the beginning. I'm not the biggest Cena fan. But you can't ignore the fact that the guy was really goddamn good. He was really goddamn good. So, pretty damn good. Underappreciated Elimination Chamber match. Now we move on to number 16. Easy for me to say in as much stumbling English as possible. Teaming up with Undertaker versus Jericho, Chris Jericho and Big Show versus DX, Shawn and Triple H. It was a Raw at MSG in November 2009. This is just before the Survivor Series 2009 match that I will talk about here in a little bit, where it was just great for the star power alone. They were given quite a bit of time. The MSG atmosphere was really goddamn cool, and it's impossible not to really like this match. And sure, you could argue that maybe the Batista match should have been above this, but just for star power alone, and just seeing it, it was great goddamn shit. And the fact that all these guys were involved in triple threat matches. Cena was going to take on DX, and Taker was going to defend his heavyweight championship against Big Show and Chris Jericho. And that's basically what it was right there. So it was great star power. Number 15 versus Punk, CM Punk on WWE Raw. From February 25th, 2013, number one contenders match. Man, you really goddamn wanted Cena to lose here just so he would face off against, Punk could get his title back. You could argue that CM Punk should have been able to retain his championship at Royal Rumble 2013 and hold it. And you could have had Cena win here to beat the champion. And you could have just made them both number one contenders, and you could have just had The Rock in there because he's the goddamn Rock, and then Rock could have beaten Cena, and Punk wouldn't have even taken the pin, and then Punk could have gotten, a title shot back, but nope, we couldn't do that. Rock the Dwayne Johnson had to get, was actually his second longest title run, believe it or not, from January 2013 to WrestleMania 29, believe it or not. This match, though, they pulled out a pile driver, they did some great goddamn shit. It was a fucking incredible wrestling match. Pay-per-view worthy shit on Raw, back when Raw actually had ratings, as opposed to ratings that have just cascaded down. Now we go to number 14, versus AJ Styles at the Royal Rumble 2017, and WWE Championship. But my fucking goodness, you wanted Styles to win. But he didn't. But it was a great goddamn match. It's impossible to ignore the work rate and the great, pacing of this match. And yes, Cena won. Of course he would win. He would only hold the championship for a bit before dropping it in an Elimination Chamber where Bray Wyatt would win and hold it for all of 7 weeks. Man, it's amazing to see the chemistry that Cena could have with some people, and him versus AJ Styles was a great goddamn feud in 2016 and into this, even though Cena took a little bit of time off after No Mercy 2016 to film something. It was American Grit or something. I don't actually totally fucking remember because I don't really give a shit. But I know that he took some time away. Being AJ Styles, his last really great moment, you could argue. I mean, yes, the squash against The Undertaker, WrestleMania 34, a year plus later. But this, his last WWE Championship win. And it should be. He should never beat the record. He should never fucking beat the record. You could argue that he never should have gotten close to the record. But nevertheless, it was a great goddamn match. Number 13 versus Umanga. The Samoan Bulldozer, Umanga. Man, God Umaga. God bless William Regal for calling him Umanga for no fucking reason. Last man standing match for the WWE Championship at the 2007 Royal Rumble. JR's iconic line, even a monster's gotta breathe. And just Cena throwing the steps, bleeding, throwing the steps was just goddamn, God, that was such a great moment. There's no way to pull up on that. Here, I'm going to throw the steps at you. Okay, ow. I don't care how big and stout you are. You can put your hand up. That's still going to hurt like a goddamn bitch. But the ropes get undone. He tries to use Turnbuckle's spike as a Samoan spike and then gets trapped in the rope and choking and everything. And Benoit would use that as inspiration a few months later. Yes, I had to slot one of those jokes in there. But yes, rest in peace, Umaga. Rest in peace, Eddie Fatu. Great goddamn match. Showed different size Cena. Umaga was pretty vicious, but eventually it just kind of became like Cena was just going to beat the piss out of him until he kicked him. Umaga, unfortunately, was never the same after this because they fed him to Cena. Man, he was really goddamn good. Number 12 versus Kevin Owens at Elimination Chamber 2015. Okay, and probably what was one of the worst pay-per-views that WWE put on, at least during the initial part of the WWE Network, which is now on the cock. I mean, Kevin, you could argue that maybe the next two matches could have gone above this. I'm putting this one on there because Owens beating Cena was a big goddamn deal. Everybody thought that Kevin Owens was going to lose here, that they were just going to feed Cena, or feed him to Cena, and Cena was going to beat the current NXT champion. But alas, Kevin Owens won. Then he lost the next two, Money in the Bank and Battleground, I believe. Remember when Battleground was a pay-per-view? God, it was a shit pay-per-view. But this was great. Great shit, and man, Kevin Owens is just in his element at this point. Great pace, great work, can't argue. And number 11 versus RVD, One Night Stand 2006. Look, as far as work, this match was not good. I mean, it wasn't. Cena interacting with the crowd, throwing his shirt, then throwing it back, doing all this stuff and everything, guy wiping his ass with it, throwing it back. The crowd would literally have burned the Hammerstein Ballroom to the ground had Cena won. I actually truly believe that. I don't think anybody would have gotten out alive. Cena would have been fending for himself there, and Vince would have needed another top guy. But RVD managing to get the win. Huge, throbbing, in-your-face adulation. Let me tell you right now, when you look down and you see too much adulation, it'll get right in your eyes. That being said, RVD winning was the right call. Of course, Edge did spear Cena through the table, and even though they had just booed Edge before in the previous, I believe it was a mixed tag match, thank you, Edge, thank you, Edge, thank you, Edge. RVD winning was a big deal, and Cena's interaction with the crowd. And don't get me wrong, the match was not necessarily bad, but it just, as far as like work and like previous matches I talked about, it was the atmosphere more than anything that made this match great. And then we go to number 10 versus Shawn Michaels at Mania 23. I've retro-reviewed this. I've retro-reviewed a lot of these shows. I'm not going to go into a long dissertation, but basically to say that this eclipsed, boy did it eclipse the match versus Triple H at the previous WrestleMania. It's actually supposed to be Triple H versus Cena in a rematch, and while I don't wish for injury at all, it was an injury that turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because Triple H tore his quad, Kevin Nash took his hat off to him, and then tore his quad, and we got Shawn Michaels versus Cena, who, by the way, were tag team champions at this time, which just showed you what Vince McMahon thought of tag team wrestling in 2007. And thank God he doesn't feel the same way, and he cares so much about tag team wrestling. Oh, that's right, he doesn't give a shit about tag team wrestling. This match, though, Shawn could get the best out of anybody. You could argue that maybe Shawn should have won. And Shawn might have wanted to, maybe, they wanted to go with Shawn winning, but Shawn said, nah, I don't really want to. Nope, I want to not lose my smile because I don't want to lose the championship back, and also I don't really think that he gave a shit. He didn't need the championship at this point. And they would have a great match and even a couple more matches I might end up mentioning a little bit later in this list. Great Mania main event though. Number 9 versus CM Punk at SummerSlam 2011. Okay, you could argue this was a much better worked match than another match I'm going to talk about here in just a little bit, but it was the atmosphere of the previous match that made that one. This, however, with Triple H as a special guest referee, and the two champions that they rushed the Summer of Punk. God fucking damn it, they rushed it. It was such a missed opportunity. They rushed it, and what ended up happening was John Cena did the honors, and CM Punk got the victory, even though Cena's foot was on the rope. And CM Punk reigned supreme as WWE Champion until he got powerbombed by a returning Kevin Nash. How Kevin Nash in 2011 snuck up on anybody, I don't know, but then Del Rio cashed in, and that pretty much wrecked that. So even though CM Punk would end up having a 434-day reign from Survivor Series 2011 to Royal Rumble 2013, you could argue that he should have held a little bit longer and that Del Rio should have been the first failed cash-in because Alberto Del Rio was not a very good choice for WWE Champion. But of course, we already knew that. What a great goddamn match, as you would expect. That being said, it was eclipsed by number 8 Cena versus CM Punk at Money in the Bank 2011. Okay, I've talked about this at length. I retro-reviewed it. I'm not going to go into another long dissertation. The atmosphere, CM Punk would have watched the entire arena be burned to the ground had he lost. And John Laurinaitis getting punked out and bitched out like the little cowardly bitch that he is. But John Cena did the honors. CM Punk left, blew the kiss, and ran off. So how could you not love that match? Number 7, AJ Styles versus AJ Styles at SummerSlam 2016. It broke SummerSlam. I mean, it really did. I think the crowd was totally fucking exhausted. Sure, there were a few too many kickouts. Sure, it went a bit long, you could argue, but clean as a fucking whistle, AJ Styles pinned John Cena. And then won the WWE Championship a little bit after that. And I ranked this just a little bit higher than the Royal Rumble 2017 match because it was better to see AJ Styles win. Even though, yes, obviously Cena was going to get his win back in the aforementioned 2017 Rumble match. Or, WWE Championship match. It's just, I just would have rather seen AJ Styles win that. But nevertheless, great goddamn match, and definitely one of the highlights of 2016 that got better once the second brand split came along. But you thought that Cena was going to lose, and I thought he was going to lose as well. But damn it, if he didn't keep doing the honors for people after stupidly beating the Nexus at SummerSlam 2010, I will never forget that. Number 6 versus Triple H versus Shawn Michaels, Survivor Series 2009. Now this is a great triple threat. Triple H and Shawn just staying there, and then Shawn super kicks Triple H. Cena looks shocked, and they just continue to have their match, and great goddamn action. Cena eventually won. Great goddamn triple threat. Better than Jericho versus Big Show versus Taker, even though at one point somebody says, go back to Toronto. I'm from Winnipeg, you idiot. Wonder where he was on January 6th. I'll leave you to guess which one I'm talking about. Nevertheless, John Cena beating Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Great goddamn shit. Faced him at WrestleMania. And the question was, could DX get along before they got it on? They couldn't because Shawn super kicked him. I just mentioned that. God damn it, I need to pay attention to myself. But now we go to number 5 versus Edge in a TLC match at Unforgiven 2006. Edge might be Cena's best rival. He's up there. I thought of doing like Cena's best rivals. Edge would be up there because they had such great chemistry. Obviously, their best matches were in 2006. It's not they didn't have great matches in 2009, but this felt fresh. Like it felt Edge was rising up back on his feet. And they traded WWE Championship back and forth. Fought over at SummerSlam 2006. Edge, if he got disqualified, would lose. He did not. He cheated, but he didn't get caught. So he won in Cena's hometown, and then Cena won in Edge's hometown. Where, yes, there were a few botches. Okay, that's going to happen because furniture doesn't necessarily work with you, but this was great shit. And Cena doing that FU where Edge cascaded through the goddamn tables ass first. Ouch. Cena didn't want to do it. It was really good stuff. A great goddamn TLC match that you guys need to check out. But man, that crowd was just tearing into John Cena. Number 4 versus Shawn, the Raw in London, April 2007. I think it went 57 to 58 minutes. I'm not quite sure on the time. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I remember loving it. And it's impossible not to love that goddamn match because This one Raw was 2 hours, by the way. So a 57-minute match was a big deal. It wasn't like they were stretching for time. They just kept letting it go. And it was right before Backlash 2007, where they just kept going and going and going. Even though it was non-title, Shawn getting the victory, big goddamn deal. Tremendous fucking match. I know somebody that I interact with on Twitter, Big Bird 432, Chris, hello, how are you? Hope you're doing well across the pond, as I believe that is the term. I hope that you enjoyed that match. You talked about enjoying that match. I believe you were there. And anybody else in the UK that was there, please let me know if that match was as great live as it came across on TV. Great shit, though. Showed that Cena could wrestle. That's the thing. There is a whole thing about Cena can't wrestle. And I'm not saying Cena was a mat technician, but Cena could work with the right people. Even I have to admit that as somebody that is not a big Cena fan. Great goddamn shit. Tremendous TV match. One of the best TV matches WWE's ever done. It was long, though, but get ready. Get ready for it to go long. That's what moving on, versus Daniel Bryan. Now Bryan Danielson. SummerSlam 2013. Cena had a tricep injury, had a friggin' just ball of fluid stuff, whatever the hell it was. I don't know what the hell that was on his goddamn elbow. But he had a pad on there. He worked it. I imagine he was in constant fucking pain, but he put over Daniel Bryan. And Daniel Bryan had a great long-running title run for like 5 minutes until Triple H pedigreed him and then Randy Orton cashed in. But Cena and Daniel Bryan had a great goddamn match. That is one of Cena's best matches. And considering that he was getting through a goddamn injury, and the crowd really wanted Daniel Bryan to win. They might have burned at least part of that arena to the ground had he not won. And then they were ready to burn the arena to the ground when Randy Orton came in and cashed out. Even though I think we were all prepared for it. But now, we move on to number 2. Versus Shawn Michaels versus Edge versus Randy Orton, Backlash 2007 for the WWE Championship. One of the best Fatal 4-Ways, one of the best multi-man matches ever in WWE existence. Fight me on this, because this was goddamn great. Finishers, classic, double teaming, all that stuff. Just the finish alone was what I fucking loved. But it was a great goddamn pace. A match I can go back and watch constantly and never get bored of. And I've seen it multiple times. What I loved was the finisher. Finish. Edge, Orton, and Cena hits the FU. I think they were still calling it the FU at this point. And then Shawn hits Sweet Chin Music, but he's out. He's just out of it. And Cena falls on either Edge or Orton. That's the only thing I can't remember. I got to rewatch that. 1, 2, and Shawn just can't get there in time because he was looking with his lazy eye. So he was keeping an eye on the guy with the popcorn machine. And John Cena gets victory and retains his WWE Championship. But man, that was a fucking tremendous match. Greg, I need to go rewatch that right now after this. In fact, I'm going to pause. I'm kidding. I'll just do number 1 versus Once in a Lifetime versus The Rock. Mania 28. Is it the best work rate match? No. Fuck no, it's not. Rock had come back. He had worked one match at Madison Square Garden against Awesome Truth. That's another honorable mention I probably should have put up. But the build, the fact Cena should have turned heel during this, definitely should have turned heel after it, but nope, they didn't want to fucking do that. He really should have fucking turned heel. Such a missed opportunity, but they built this thing up on social media. Miami, that outdoor arena held the noise. They were booing Cena. There were some cheers for Cena. There were some. But there were massive cheers for The Rock. Heavy Flow Rider doing his, that's his wife, doing his intro, Rock's intro. And then Machine Gun Kelly and Skylar Grey, I believe. Machine Gun Kelly, by the way, is a fucking goddamn douche nozzle that should not ever be allowed to fucking rap at all. But nevertheless, they did a great they paced the match well. Cena had to, even though Rock, obviously a veteran, had not wrestled in so long, Cena had been there for so long, while Rock was away in Hollywood and rising up and becoming a big movie star by this point. He had had some trials and tribulations before, had some successes, had some failures, but then the Fast and Furious movies, that's the German version, got him back up. And then they crap this, and it looks like Cena's going to win. He's going to do this. He's just a people's elbow. And then he gets hit with the rock bottom. 1, 2, 3. It was literally like a friggin' sonic boom from Guile. Seen Guile? He's about this tall. Moving on from that. It was a giant explosion. Giant explosion of savings, of a crowd with their throbbing adulation messing up everything. The janitors were upset, but it was great. Rock wins. They should have put the cap on that right there. But as kids say, no cap, I don't think I'm even coming close to this because I'm 41, don't understand what you kids say. You kids get off my lawn. Rock won. Great goddamn moment. Cena looking dejected. There's where you turn him heel. But no, why the fuck would you do that? This was great goddamn shit, though. That, to me, is John Cena's best WWE match. And considering that he only wrestled in UPW, like in the Indies, and OVW under the WWE banner, I mean, where else could he fucking wrestle? But that's his best match, in my personal opinion. The atmosphere, the build, and all that. Other matches have better work and better wrestling. That is the encapsulation of John Cena's career. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.